Hello class, now that we have concluded our 3 lectures on the Varna Ashrama Dharma system, we're going to now move on, and I am on click, let me see, click about 119 on the Prezi. And what we're going to go over now is the 5 main concepts of Hinduism. I like to explain this to you so that you can have a clear sense of what the main ideas are and how they interconnect. So let's go ahead and look at them. This has been the most significant ones. Number 1 is going to be samsara, or reincarnation. Now, samsara is not simply reduced to reincarnation. It speaks of the world of sensory experience of the world, the unenlightened world. So it is the process of death and rebirth. So if you want to think of it, that's what reincarnation is. This process is living in this life, having to go through the life stages, having to be born ignorant and recollect what was there in the previous lives, having to know yourself and go through the Varna Ashrama Dharma system, having to grow old, sick, and die. And this is what is so disheartening for a Hindu, is the fact that you have to encounter this countless times. That's what makes it so painful, is that human existence is filled with suffering, with toil and misery, and we overlook that ordinarily in our kind of way of life. We kind of tend to be distracted by it, and especially in the West, in the United States. I mean, if there is one emblematic cinema expressed by the United States and Americans, is the sitcom. The Greeks used tragedy, and they were very heart-wrenching tragedies. Human beings, they were intended to be deep, profound, soul-searching, and excruciating to our emotions, so that we can kind of purge out those longings and desires that we have. On the other hand, Americans are most well known for things like The Office and Friends and Saved by the Bell and whatever else was there before, where you want just to sit down for 25 minutes, pick up this humorous, kind of absurd and not really quite enlightening process of thinking, and just go on with life. You just needed a brief respite from the ordinary pains of existence. So samsara and reincarnation is pretty much hell in a Hindu sense. Now, in case you don't think much about this, just think about, I'll give you a few examples. Think about the cruelty of nature against nature, the way in which animals are constantly combating one another, and how lions have to kill hyenas and hyenas surround the lions, and how flies can lay eggs in the eyes of horses and cause blindness, in which you have all sorts of other animals that are constantly devouring each other. And you can just watch any documentary, and it doesn't take long to realize that. Then you have nature versus men. The many ways in which nature just makes our lives difficult. It may be too much sun, too little sun, too much rain, too little rain. It may be sicknesses that develop because of malaria and other aspects. Maybe allergies that you may be experiencing. So there are thousands and thousands of diseases in which nature is constantly trying to get at you. If not, then you went hiking, you got poison ivy, and now you have 20 days and just nasty effects on you. And this can just be piled on and on. And then think about the atrocities of men against men on a small scale within friendships and families, and think of it at a global scale in regards to world wars and conflicts. And what some human beings do to others with human trafficking and sex trafficking and organ trafficking and all these horrifying things that go on in our lives every single day. And then you have, think of the conflict between males and females, men and women, and the way in which psychologically we just tear at each other and destroy their hopes and dreams. And after a person gave you the best years of your life, you walk away from them and leave them in the most vulnerable state. So that is another component of it. Think about pessimism and the tendency of human beings to just to make their lives even more difficult by being pessimistic and cynical about the future. think about old age and all the pains and how gruesome it is and how painful. Recall that poem, do not go gently into that night, rage, rage against the coming of the night. And that is, old age is not for sissies. And when your body begins to completely break down point by point, and you go from sight to taste buds to mobility to every aspect of your life is going to now suffer. And so old age and sickness and death and war and famine and plagues, and I could go on and on and on just the degree to which we are constantly inundated by pain and suffering and human wickedness. So that is one aspect, that is samsara. So keep that in mind. That is the entire process of death and rebirth. So it is more than just reincarnation. It is the entire worldview that accompanies that, and having to be born, grow old, sick, and die. Then you have karma. Now, karma is a neutral term, so please do away with any preconceived conception. Usually karma is brought up in negative context, like, oh, that was your karma. It's you do evil, evil comes back to you. That's not the way the Hindu would use the term karma. Karma just simply means the consequence of your actions, or the result of your actions. So when we say consequences in the English language, they can be positive consequences and negative consequences. The consequence of result of working out and having a proper diet may be a better condition, wellness, and lifestyle. So a karma could be a good karma or bad karma, but it is a zero-sum game, if you are familiar with that term in economics. And that is, if you do good deeds, then it deduces it from the bad deeds, and so the other way around. If you do bad deeds, then you undermine your own good deeds, and then at some point you have to pay for it. So that is the way in which karma is to be spoken of, as a neutral term, which can be positive or negative. And then you have dharma, which is the duty according to one's caste, and that is of course prescribed by the laws of Manu and the regulations, and that is something that you have no choice in. You cannot abandon it. You are destined to fulfill that. If you do not, then you are dooming not only yourself but your posterity as to the consequence of your actions. And then you have moksha, and moksha is the process of self-realization, enlightenment, and when you come to realize the oneness of the universe. And here is where you speak of Atman is Brahman, all is one, there is no distinctions to be had. The entire universe is the product of a mind, and Brahman is in which all things reside. And we'll discuss some more of this as we come to Shankara and Ramanuja later on. And then the last one that I like to bring up is a discussion on reincarnation. There are several things to consider about reincarnation. First and foremost is how long has it been going on for? That's something that you as a Hindu will have to reflect upon. It cannot be a temporary process because the soul is eternal. So if it has been going on forever, then the natural question that arises is, why haven't I been able to accomplish the end that I had in mind? So that's one of the contentions about reincarnation. The second one has to do with not only the attainment of it, why hasn't it happened yet, but also the other one is it assumes that there is a subject like me, in this case Arturo, Atman, that is going through this process which is distinct from Brahman. And that's going to be a very difficult thing to try to square up with all is one. You can't have your individual existence, my own personal identity, going through a process of growth when all that exists is Brahman, and Brahman is eternal, and Brahman is all encompassing. So how can I, which am a product of an illusion, how can I, the deceived self, undergo a process when reality itself is not true, it's not real or existent? So that creates that difficulty. The other one speaks about personal identity or personhood. In reincarnation, one is said to have the ability or to be demoted to the point of being reincarnated into an animal. In that case, then does the animal have a recollection of previous existences, and is it conscious? And what is the continuity between me at this stage in life, in this reincarnation where I have the ability to think, and me as a deer, or as a monkey, or a squirrel? What continuity is there? Is there personhood which transcends the process of reincarnation, or is it an impersonal process where only karma is to be passed down, but yet the personal identity of the human being or the person reflecting on it is non-existent? So personal identity will be another significant question to be had. So when you discuss this process of reincarnation, what you come to realize is that it is plagued with philosophical and religious conflicts within itself, contradictions. And that is why those who have made great progress in the process of reincarnation abandon the idea of reincarnation itself. Reincarnation is only true for those who have not yet realized the true essence of reality. So what you have here is that the distinction between enlightened and unenlightened consciousness is not a meaningful distinction. Reincarnation itself becomes, of course, superfluous and becomes a non-existent reality, because there is no subject that exists which undergoes that process. There is only Brahman and his ideas. So even though reincarnation is very much disseminated through the West, and the way in which we usually think of it is in terms of which animal would you like to be reincarnated, and think of it as if it was a very cool experience that you're going to undergo, rather than recognizing that reincarnation is the worst thing that could happen to you as a Hindu. And on the other hand is reincarnation assumes the existence of a subject, which is non-existent in Hinduism, and therefore the process of reincarnation itself is not meaningful. At what point, after having gone through many trials of attaining reincarnation and you don't do it, do you give up? Imagine if you took this class and this is your the first time, let's say you take it and you failed. You say, well, the second time I'll be better prepared. I'm going to pass it. I know what the assignments are. I know what kind of questions. I know how he conducts the class. And then you take it again, and then you fail again. And then you do that for 10 more times and 50 times. So at what point do you say, this is not hopeful, this is just quite unsurmountable, and I cannot continue to be doing this? So reincarnation is the same way. Human beings, after many tries, then you have to give up that. If your soul has always existed, then you have had an infinite number of trials, and if those tries have not succeeded, then what hope is there that you will have it? So I like to bring up this question so that you become more cognizant that in the history of Hinduism, there is not a monolithic understanding of reincarnation. If you're at the popular level, reincarnation is a big deal because you haven't understood the meaning of the ideas behind it. You simply grew up with that. You take it by the expectations are set for you. You don't quite understand the history of the concept or the ideas. You simply kind of adhere to it because that's the way religion has been presented to you. If you're at the historical level, then you can become more aware of the significance of the process of reincarnation in the history of Hinduism. But yet, even then, in the historical process, then you become aware that some have departed from it and some have renounced it because in and of itself doesn't seem to account sufficiently for the problems that it brings. And then, of course, at the philosophical level, which is the enlightenment level, you realize that this is not real. We'll see that with Buddhism as well. So keep that in mind. These concepts correlate to one another, but at the same time, there is this higher consciousness, which is the one that redefines them in a more meaningful sense, given the whole of the system.